is shiny stuff and dreams are made of stooped necromancers. He sings like a banana wrist having strayed too close to the constellations on their shaved skulls.
There was a bad line in the prank call. Someone spouting insane babble. I couldn't make sense of it. But I had an overwhelming sense of deja vu. The caller's voice sounded oddly familiar.
You're in a Lars Gen video, Max.
The truth split my skull open, the glaring green light washing the lies away. All of my past was just fragmented still shots, words hanging in the air like balloons. I was in a Lars Gen video. Funny as hell. It was the most horrible thing I could think of.
A lot of people have a specific video game they played as a child that served as some sort of an awakening for them, making them realize the kind of different emotions games can evoke with their way of storytelling. For some people, it might have been games like Metal Gear Solid, or Final Fantasy VII, or Silent Hill. The one we're going to be talking about today, however, is one I didn't actually get to finish as a kid. Remedy's Max Payne. But for many who did finish Max Payne back when it first came out, it really opened up a whole new world to them. It made them realize the kind of story a game could tell, even when the gameplay only consisted of John Woo dives and explosions. I myself only got to properly experience this trilogy of games for the first time last year in 2023, and with age, both for myself and the games, especially the first two, I only grew to appreciate what Remedy were able to do back in those years with such a small team and budget even more. Everything was so unique and amazing for its time, and it set the blueprint for almost every one of Remedy's future projects, all of which I adore. Max Payne, to me, is just one of those titles that I don't think I'll ever truly get tired of. It really is a timeless piece of media and art that continues to stand the test of time, blending everything that could possibly sound awesome to anyone, from amazing action to psychological horror, to Norse mythology, film noir, comics, all combining to make a video game that is nothing short of amazing for the fact that it came out at a time like 2001. But there's so much more to the story, and so much more to the development and history of what became Max Payne, and Remedy Entertainment themselves. What better way is there to spend Christmas than with the best Christmas game, Max Payne? So, sit down and let's talk about it. And hey, if you're interested in more long retrospective videos like this one, please consider subscribing to see more, and drop a like if you enjoyed. Thanks. Now, strap in, Payne to the max. Remedy Entertainment was established in Finland in 1995. The small team worked on their first game in the basement of one of the founder's parents' house, his name being oh my god, how the hell am I gonna pronounce that? Samuli Saivahioko, alongside other founders who were all friends in their early 20s with a passion for video games. The first title that they worked on together in that very basement started out with the name High Speed. It was to be a racing game. Scott Miller, who was the founder of Apogee Software, would persuade them to add vehicle combat elements, and thanks to this, the game was renamed to Death Rally. Around that time, one of the members of the small team, Petri Jarviletto, got in touch with a longtime friend of his, a student who was studying English literature in the University of Helsinki, who now goes by the pen name Sam Lake, so that Sam could write dialogue and text for them to use in the game. Sam agreed and joined, remaining with Remedy to this day as its creative director and one of the greatest minds in the business. Death Rally was released on September 7th, 1996 on MS-DOS, and it was shortly after this where Remedy began to work on their next game. They pitched several ideas about a shooter game by the name of Dark Justice. Scott Miller of Apogee agreed to fund the project on the condition that the game had a recognizable and memorable protagonist like Duke Nukem, 3D graphics, and a better name. Remedy went through many different names from Dick Justice to Max Heat, finally settling on Max Payne. They wanted the game to have bullet time and slow motion elements, which were a staple of Hong Kong action movies, and they wanted a unique atmosphere that would blend in well with the story. Sam Lake was once more appointed as the writer for the game, as he took inspiration from film noir, crime fiction, and comics to drive the story, themes, and aesthetic of Max Payne. They would collaborate with 3D Realms as well. The first trailer for the game was shown in E3 1998, and it immediately caught glimpses from investors and players alike, who found the smoothness of the gameplay and the shooting mechanics on display riveting, and the comic strips to be a unique element not seen in a game before. 3D Realms pretty recently shared footage of this early build of the game from 1998. It clearly looked unfinished and clunky, and lacked that iconic noir aesthetic that people know and love the franchise for. And if you were paying attention, you might now be wondering, Is that the writer of the game, Sam Lake, playing the main character? Yes, despite the support they had, you'll have to remember Remedy was an unbelievably small team back in the late 90s and early 2000s. Instead of pre-rendered cutscenes, they decided to take photographs they'd used for comic strips and dub them over, and the characters for the most part were all played by team members and friends and family of said team members. This led to Sam Lake playing Max Payne and giving him that beloved iconic shit-eating grin on his face. Furthermore, both of his parents played characters as well, with his mother playing the main antagonist Nicole Horn, and his father playing Alfred Woden. The animations were motion captured to perfection, and like other games of that era, JPEGs of the actors' faces were slapped on the models. The game was originally set to be released in 2000, but it was delayed so that the team could improve and revamp some things, and as you can see, that was probably a great idea. Remedy would work with Rockstar to also port the game over and publish it for the PS2 and the Xbox. Rockstar would also work with them on the sequel a few years later and publish that game as well, creating the common misconception that Max Payne is a Rockstar series, which is only partially true. While the first two games were developed by Remedy, it was only the third game in the series that was developed by Rockstar after they acquired the IP, but that was all the way in 2012. For now, we're talking about the first Max Payne. After much anticipation and a few delays, it finally released for Windows on July 24th, 2001. So, the gameplay loop of Max Payne is fairly simple on paper and doesn't have much to it. The level-to-level progression wasn't anything groundbreaking even at the time, but it produced something fun and easily replayable 20 years down the road. The game is set in New York during a heavy snowstorm, so there's a variety of environments you might be going through, from the snow-soaked streets to all sorts of different corridors inside buildings, parking lots, and more. But the core principle and the level design of the game is narrow shooting galleries where you can shoot, dodge around, and rain gunfire on enemies with your dual Berettas. The good old corridor shooter. At the start of the game, you only have your pistol, and you're treated to a small number of enemies to go through. You unlock a variety of new weapons as you progress, from different handguns, Uzis, assault rifles, shotguns, grenade launchers, and more. You can shoot and jump, and besides that, there's some small interaction with the environment, like the ability to open up drawers and lockers to check for ammo or painkillers, which are your healing source. Of course, the biggest feature that made this game stand out and damn near spawned a subgenre of its own, giving Max Payne the level of influence that games like Devil May Cry have for revolutionizing certain aspects of action games, is the shoot dodge. More commonly known as bullet time, you can have Max dive in any direction, whether that's forward, backward, left, or right. Everything else around him is slowed down, so you can pick off enemies while also dodging bullet storms coming your way. Max can also do this without the jump, time just slows down like normal. Bullet time is also a staple of movies like The Matrix and the works of John Woo, the latter of whom has his name mentioned as a reference in the game.
It's me! Open up! Let me in, quick!
Not so fast. The password. John Woo.
Come on. Okay, John Woo.
All right. Come right in.
It's a trap! It's there!
It runs off of the adrenaline mechanic, which you can store as you play the game, shoot and kill enemies. When it runs out in the middle of bullet time, you go right back to normal. But even with bullet time, Max Payne is one difficult game. It takes so much practice and hours to even be semi-good, jumping around and landing headshots each time you slow down time. I myself firstly played it on the PlayStation 2, meaning I had to follow the checkpoint-based system. On the PC release of the game, you had a quick save function you could use at the click of a singular button, and most players would just save scum their way through the game, coming right back before the showdown that killed them. The PS2 did not have this, so you'd have to go back to a checkpoint every time you died. Thankfully, the last few playthroughs of the game, however, I was able to save scum to my heart's content. Again, while Max Payne was a hard game, it was fair. I'm not gonna pretend like there's no flawed sections, I mean... But overall, it's undoubtedly fair. The level design is incredibly well put together, and enemies and encounters are carefully placed to give you a challenge without also feeling like the game is too random or arcadey while playing through the story. There's a different game mode for that after all. In addition to all of this, the world feels legitimately alive and the noir aesthetic is absolutely gorgeous to go through. Make no mistake, the few years Remedy took following the delays were well spent, because for a time like 2001, Max Payne was a gorgeous game with an atmosphere and a setting that was nothing short of beautiful. Not just to play through, but also in terms of complementing and going hand in hand with the story and the themes. The art direction and the set pieces are immaculate. The snow-covered streets, the dark buildings, the dimmed lights, the clubs, all the cute details you can find throughout the game, like interacting with the vending machines, the water coolers, the toilets, the BDSM beds, or watching the strange and outlandish in-universe TV shows. Even things like the comic books not related to the one we experienced the story on. Max Payne had so much that was unique and beautiful at that time. There hadn't been a game back then that blended all of these things together so well, giving you an unforgettable experience as you're left in awe of not just the fun and chaos of the gameplay, but the gritty atmosphere and story, and the quality of the voice acting paving the way for the memorable characters and breathing life into them. It's insane to think that all of this was achieved by such a small yet passionate team, all the way back in 2001. But, with all that out of the way, let's get to the meat and potatoes. The story. The life and times of one Maxwell Payne. From the moment Max drew his first breath, it seemed as though the world had marked him for misfortune. The same cold and rainy November night that he was born on seemed to set the tone for how the rest of his life would play out. Gloomy downpours and snows, the sound of sirens outside of dimmed buildings, you name it. Maxwell Payne was born on November 30th, 1965, to Jack and Helen Payne. His father, Jack, was a Vietnam War veteran who clearly suffered from PTSD and sank his sorrows onto the bottle as well as onto Max and his mother, Helen. He was an abusive parent who, in Max's own words, majored in telling other people how to live and minored in hypocrisy. He often lectured young Max about things pointless to a child of his age, about staying true to himself, about looking death in the eye and not being afraid. He never bothered with things as simple as showing up for Max's birthday or giving him a gift, even when Helen begged him to. He'd brush her off, insisting that the boy is soft and that it'll toughen him up. Max loved his mother and his maternal grandfather growing up. The old man taught literature at university and often told Max and Helen stories of mythology. Looking back, Max called them both dreamers who talked and dreamt of a better world, all with a drink and smoke in hand. With all of Jack's demons, the constant nightmares and panic attacks he would get as a result of the horrors he witnessed and committed in Vietnam, it was a bad mix with the amount of alcohol he would consume. It wouldn't be long before he had violent outbursts, beating Helen and screaming at her, cheating on her, and worse. Max wanted to protect her, but didn't know how. The combination of constant grief and alcoholism unfortunately led Helen to an early grave in 1976, as she passed away, leaving a hole in Max's heart that would shape the rest of his life, and it would become almost like a common theme, a revolving door which he passes through every couple of years. He stood in front of the grave with his grandfather as she was buried, tears rushing down his face like a waterfall. I just wanted to save her, but I didn't know how. His grandfather held him tight. I know you're hurting, Max. Trust me when I say it does get better. As Max entered the place he'd have to call home even when his mother wasn't around anymore, he thought about the old man's words. I loved my grandfather, but I should have told him then and there I knew he was full of shit. It almost seemed as though Jack didn't care about Helen at all. He was cheating on her while she was dying, and there he was, drowning himself in alcohol with yet another woman. Max held a fake replica revolver as he looked at his father, wishing he could shoot him. But it's not as though he needed to, when Jack would do him the favor of dying on his own, due to similar reasons as Helen 3 years later in 1979. Max grew up to be a police officer, entering the New York Police Academy and training throughout the 1980s. He would be a top scorer in his class and one of the best young officers they would have. For a time, he had some friends in that academy. Things seemed to be looking up, although there was still a void in him. At some point during the 1990s, early in his career as an officer, he met Alex Balder, a man who would become his best friend and more judicious and diplomatic partner, in contrast to Max's more brute force personality, the brain in the operations with Max's brawn. The two worked amazingly together, fighting crime throughout New York and building decorated resumes. They would be able to bust a major drug deal between an unknown gang and the Punchinellos, one of the biggest crime families in the city, exchanging a circulating drug by the name of Valkyr. Max would become an incredible sharpshooter in that time, possessing skills and talents rarely seen at that level for a man in the force his age. During that deal, Alex was ambushed from behind. Max would dive in and make the save, landing clear shots on the head and back of several of the foot soldiers and saving Alex's life. There was a newspaper issue shortly thereafter with the front page headline, Hero Cops, with a photo of the two detectives smiling together. Sometime during those very years, Max met the woman who would become his wife on a walk in Manhattan, Michelle. He saw her being attacked by two robbers, and in his own words, he thought he would be her knight in shining armor when he made the save and fended them off, although with a tiny bit of violence. He walked Michelle to the subway afterwards. She was very flirty towards Max and often teased him, calling him a poor bastard and saying his parents must have hated him as he told her of the name they gave him, not knowing the irony of what she just said there. Although Max was shy and didn't know how to speak to her very well, he mustered up the courage to ask her out for a drink. Michelle told Max she worked at the district attorney's office and that he could visit her there. The two began to hang out, and a few years later, they would get married and go to Montauk for their honeymoon, moving into their new home together afterwards. Those were the best years of Max's life. Everything was nice and steady. He was happy with everything. Work was going well even when his best friend Alex had transferred to the DEA. They would still meet each other often and would play poker together. Alex would often badger Max and try to convince him to join the DEA, but Max would decline, saying that the work would be too much as he had a family to think about now. Soon after their marriage, Michelle gave birth to her and Max's baby girl, Rose. Michelle would temporarily leave her job to take care of the baby while Max continued to work, his life becoming more quiet as a desk cop in the office, handling paperwork as opposed to being undercover and under direct danger all the time in the DEA with Alex. Life was good. Michelle would soon return to her job at the district attorney's office. They started to raise their baby together, a family that Max never had growing up, a child that he had the chance to raise and love better than his own father did for him, a wife that he loved and couldn't live without, a house on the Jersey side, a best friend in Alex. In his own mind, he really was living the American dream. Six months later, in 1998, Max Payne's entire world would come crashing down. During a typical workday at the office, Michelle picked up a stack of papers and began to work on them as per usual. She stumbled upon something by the name of Project Valhalla. In her diary, she wrote,
An army dossier found its way to my desk yesterday. Valhalla? Isn't that a Norse myth? Something about Vikings? I tried to tell Max about it, but he was busy, that cute frown on his brow. Guess it's nothing, just a mix-up at the courier service.
She had tried to tell Max about her strange finding, but he was running late and didn't have the time to hear her out. The two exchanged a hug and a kiss and said goodbye to each other as Max left. For him, it was yet another mundane day at the office, just like Michelle. Nothing of import happened. As he was on his way out, he spoke with Alex, who once again asked when he'd come work with him in the DEA.
So when are you coming to work for me, Detective Payne?
You'd make me work undercover in some hellhole. Sorry, Alex. Michelle and the baby come first. See? My last smoke. It's bad for the baby.
That's you, Max. A regular Boy Scout.
See, Alex?
Still on for poker Thursday night, right?
Like taking candy from a baby.
As he headed home, he once again thought about life, how good everything had been for him, how he was living the American dream.
Honey, I'm home. But dreams have a nasty habit of going bad when you're not looking. The sun went down with practiced bravado. Twilight crawled across the sky, laden with foreboding.
Something was off. The house was eerily quiet. A strange symbol had been painted on the wall and Michelle wasn't answering. The phone began to ring as Max knew someone had broken in. Upon picking up, he urged whoever was on the other line to call 911.
Listen, someone's broken into my house. Call 911.
Is this the Payne residence?
Yes, someone's broken into my house. They're still here. You have to...
Good. I'm afraid I cannot help you.
Who is this? Hello?
With each step of the stairs, the sounds grew sharper, screams tearing through the air, gunshots. Max's worst fears were coming to life. And there she was, Rose. A 6-month-old baby as innocent as a dove, shot dead. The home invaders were clearly out of it, shouting strange cryptic things as Max shot back at them in a panic. As he killed the last of the 3, he looked to his left.
No, God, no, please, Michelle. Oh, baby.
Michelle, now lifeless on the bed, was cradled in a crimson pool. Max fell to his knees as the room was now suffocated by silence, broken by a scream. Max's.
No!
Shortly afterwards, Alex and the DEA began to look into the murder. After a brief investigation, they found that the killers were high on Valkyr, or simply V, the same designer drug they had encountered years ago. A funeral was held for Michelle and Rose, as they were buried in the same grave, and soon after, Max finally told Alex he'd be joining the DEA, though not in the circumstances Alex had wished for. But be that as it may, Max was a fantastic detective and gunman, and he'd be a valuable addition to the investigation of Valkyr. Max, as anyone could imagine, was in the worst of mental states, mourning the loss of not only the love of his life and his daughter, but the life he had and so desperately wanted to fight for, the life that was ripped away from him in a New York minute. And with the investigation underway, he'd have to go undercover. He'd get into fights and shootouts, having to take painkillers, worsening his own condition bit by bit. Max went undercover to infiltrate the Punchinello family, starting out from the lowest of the low and working his way up to the upper echelons. It took 3 long years. During that time, Max only worsened, growing more depressed and brooding, having to pretend to be in it with mafia members and the like, adjusting to being alone yet again, haunted by nightmares of his wife and child. Despite that, his cool demeanor and sarcastic wit remained intact when he'd interact with the gang members. It almost seemed like a coping mechanism for him, putting on that grin, being a wise-ass cracking clever insults, playing it cool. It seemed to take him out of his real world, even briefly. In any case, after 3 long years, in 2001, they finally caught a break in the case when Jack Lupino, one of the big shots in the Punchinello family, began trafficking the drug. Max remained undercover, trying to work his way up there to get to the source, working with Alex and another agent going by the name of BB. While Max was working in Jack Lupino's crew, in February of 2001, New York saw one of the worst snowstorms in its history, forcing the townspeople to stay inside their homes as the streets were void of anyone. On one fateful night during that cold February, Max received a call from BB.
BB here. Something urgent has come up with Jack Lupino. You need to meet with Alex immediately at the Roscoe Street station.
I hadn't had a face-to-face with Alex since I'd gone undercover.
Heeding BB's words, Max headed to Roscoe Street station. The second he arrived, he smelled something foul. The gate to the main station was locked. There were shotgun shells and bullet marks, and a blood trail leading to the corpse of a cop. Death was in the air. He began to make his way through the station fast, urgently trying to find Alex, and it wasn't long before trouble found him instead, as he got into a shootout with several mobsters. He traversed the station, his finger steady on the trigger as more and more of the mobsters would come through. He eavesdropped on one of their conversations, discovering that they were in an ongoing heist. He later found another transit cop and rescued him from being killed by one of the gunmen. He needed the cop's help to access the security room, but as the cop helped him, he was shot by the mobsters. Max cleared the room and powered the train, using it to ram the barricade the mobsters set up in order to get to the main station.
So much for being subtle.
Now making his way through the old station, he heard some of the mobsters talk about Jack Lupino, how he's an insane lunatic that's completely out of his mind, confirming that this is his crew, the same one Max is undercover with, under the Punchinellos. Max heads deeper into the station and encounters 2 more mobsters having an exchange.
Hold on here. Give me the detonator. What are you talking about? The detonator. I thought you'd bring it. You were supposed to bring it. Yeah, right.
After killing them, he finds the hole they blew in one of the walls in the station leading directly into the Roscoe Bank vault. This was the heist they were talking about. In those vaults sat mountains of gold and of course Lupino's gang. Max shot his way through and stopped them from succeeding with their heist. The phone rings as he picks it up to hear Deputy Chief Jim Bravura on the other end.
We come to you now live from the crime scene.
Who is this?
Right back at you.
This is Deputy Chief Jim Bravura from the NYPD. You are to cease your criminal activities and surrender immediately.
Sure thing, Jim. Me and the boys have been talking and everyone's real sorry. They'll never do it again.
Who the hell is this?
Being placed at the scene of a bank robbery wouldn't have tipped the odds in my favor.
While searching for the detonator, Max saw that the gang pulling the heist didn't seem to be here for the gold after all. Instead, it was Azer Corporation Bonds, a pharmaceutical company with the slogan, "A bit closer to heaven." They were becoming huge in the last few years, and they were constant news headlines. Max took the detonator and blew a hole to the other side of the station. As he walked through it, he heard the familiar voice of his best friend. The two were separated by a gate.
Max, Jesus, you almost gave me a heart attack. I nearly shot you.
Alex, I'm glad to see you.
What the hell's going on? There are more corpses here than at the city morgue.
It's an armed robbery, a tunnel job straight to the Roscoe Bank vault through the old station wall. Is this why? This is Lupino's gig?
This is Lupino's doing? Lupino's men? Really?
You sure know how to pick a place. Can you get through?
No, it's locked. We gotta get out of here. If it's Lupino, it's... Alex? Alex!
Alex fell to the ground, his eyes wide and empty, staring into nothingness. Once again, Max could do nothing but stand frozen as someone he loved was taken from him. For 3 long years, Alex had been his anchor, the last thread of sanity holding him together after losing his wife and daughter. And now, that thread had snapped. The memories crashed over him in fragments. The Hero Cops headline in the newspapers, the long nights on the job, the laughter over Poker Thursdays. And now it had all led to this. His best friend, discarded like he was nothing. But this was no time for grief. In its place came a fiery, unrelenting rage. Max's world narrowed to the muzzle of his gun and the mobsters before him. He tore through them like nothing. There was no time to breathe, no time to think. Alex's killer must have been nearby still, and he had to be someone from Lupino's gang. He deduced it was likely them who got Alex, as he'd ended up stepping on Jack Lupino's toes in the investigation and had evidence on him. It was a good plan, have Alex murdered and Max framed. Max had no time to collect himself and his thoughts. He immediately headed to Lupino's hotel, a sleazy building where he ran his racket of sex, drugs, and contract killings. The mobsters in there were anything but happy to see him.
The place was run by a couple of murdering mobsters with shark smiles. The Finito brothers.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's the pain in the butt. Pain to the max.
You're killing me. Did you make that up yourselves, or you get some wino downstairs to come up with it? Don't answer that. A rhetorical question. I got something for the boss. Lupino around?
That kind of depends on who's asking. A friend or a junk squad plant. Don't answer. It's one of them, how do you put it, rhetorical questions. Lupino ain't here, but he said bye.
The Finito brothers began to shoot at Max as he dived for cover. He managed to gun them down, afterwards picking up the letter on the table.
I had met Lupino only once. The gangster ran all his rackets through his right-hand man, Vinny Gagniti. Gagniti was a high-strung whiner on the verge of breaking apart, like an overamped Energizer bunny. He had the brains to run the business, but he lacked the balls, always falling short, taking his frustration out on underage addicts and call girls.
The V deal goes down at your hotel. Jack's exact words, quote, "Vinny, you're in charge of this one," unquote. Rico Muerte's coming to see it through. Anything goes wrong and everybody's gonna get dead, goes double for you. Treat this guy real good. Anything he wants, you give him. Don't screw this up or you're finito, finitos.
A V deal meant added security, locked doors, and lots of nervous thugs with itchy trigger fingers. I'd seen nothing coming in, but that didn't mean it hadn't been there. Rico Muerte was a regular Kaiser Soze, a spook story told to keep the apes in line. 313. The Finitos had scribbled Muerte's room number on the note's margin.
As Max begins to make his way through the hotel to get to Rico Muerte's room, he sees the news of Alex's death now being broadcast, and his own name and picture showing up when the main suspect was brought up. It was a sad thing to witness. The two men who were like brothers, one dead and the other one being framed for his murder. But again, Max needed his trigger finger to remain steady and he needed to push on. When he found the room, it was a trap he narrowly avoided as a shotgun meant for him shot into nothing. It was there he would find another letter, one that might finally be able to incriminate Angelo Punchinello.
Our investigation had turned up nothing to link Angelo Punchinello, the head of the Punchinello family, to Valkyr. All tracks had ended with Jack Lupino. The letter in Muerte's room was signed by the Don himself. It was the first hint that the Kingpin knew what was brewing inside his syndicate.
The trouble you got into after the Chicago screw-up. The Punchinello family bailed you out. You have been waiting for a chance to pay us back. One of our trusted boys has a monkey the size of King Kong on his back. We need your special skills for backup on a major deal.
Collecting evidence had gotten old a few hundred bullets back. I was already so far past the point of no return I couldn't even remember what it looked like when I had passed it.
With no regards to that, as he was already now a fugitive, Max pushed on through the dim and decrepit hotel, where he found a room and in it the diary of a hooker by the name of Candy Dawn. There was a collection of tapes and a secret camera, meaning she had blackmail on powerful and influential people who came to see her, something that gets brought up later. Max then made his way to the boiler room of the hotel underground, where there was a dead man tied to a chair, and next to it was a newspaper folded open on a Captain Baseball Bad Boy comic strip, a series that was written by an in-universe character named Sammy Waters. I'll let you figure that one out. In any case, over at the bar, he finally found Rico Muerte, with Candy Dawn blowing him.
Rico Muerte, big-time hustler.
Who the hell?
It's that cop.
Muerte went for his gun.
Of course, Max shot them both dead and headed to the counter where there was a switchboard.
Boss, Gonidi, this is Max Payne. He came, started capping us. He killed...
Are you freaking kidding me? He's just one lousy cop. You better be freaking kidding me. Whack him. What's the freaking problem? Hello? Answer me. Hello?
The word was out. A deadly virus released into the city's corrupt circulatory system. Something wicked this way comes. Max Payne at large.
Vinny Gognitti was already infamous as a jittery, unstable man, a bundle of nerves barely holding together. It was almost comical the way he squirmed and stumbled through life, a far cry from the ruthless enforcer you'd expect as Lupino's right-hand man. But Max wasn't here for laughs, he was here for answers, and he knew he'd soon come face to face with Vinny. If Max wanted to get to Lupino, he'd have to make Vinny talk. And speaking of Lupino, Max finally stepped out of the decaying hotel, the cold night air biting against his skin as he made his way towards the tenements. The apartment complex loomed ahead, another sleazy hangout spot for Valkyrie junkies, loan sharks, and other shades of lowlife. As Max walked the snow-covered streets, a car sped by.
I got to see Lupino's hangout all lit up. A bomb went off, turning snow into liquid gold. A pillar of fire lifted the remains of a car straight up into the air. The flames were highlighted on the hood of a black Mercedes-Benz as it coasted down the street real slow, as if the driver didn't have a worry in the world. I got a good look at the man riding shotgun. It was Vladimir, the head of the local Russian mob, the fly in Don Punchinello's soup.
The explosion set off a chain reaction, igniting bombs set up by Lupino throughout the apartment complex. One after another, they erupted and caused further chaos and destruction. Across the street sat the newspaper stand, every one of them with the same headline, Max Payne wanted for the murder of Alex Balder. The sound of the distant sirens didn't ease Max either, but he pushed on and entered the complex. Inside, as Max shot his way through the mobsters, a payphone began to ring.
A beaten-up phone in the entrance hall was ringing. It could have been just a junkie in need of a fix, but it turned out to be something more sinister than that.
Am I speaking to Mr. Payne?
Who wants to know?
My name is Alfred Wooden. You must hurry. The police are on their way.
Tell me something I don't know.
They know you're there.
How? And what's it to you?
I will contact you again.
The cops arrived, sirens singing in the off-key harmony of a manic-depressive choir. I had a few minutes while the SWAT team would go through their usual routine. By the time they busted in, I needed to be long gone.
Max Payne, this is Deputy Chief Jim Bravura from the NYPD. Drop your weapons and come out with your hands above your head.
As the deputy chief once again urged Max to come out and show himself, he went down to the pawn shop, finding a bunch of weapons lying around. Maybe there was more to this Vladimir Lem person, but for now, Max had other things in mind, like avoiding the police who were closing in on the building. He made his way through the destroyed staircases, gunning down more mobsters and junkies on his way, when he finally stumbled on Lupino's office.
Vinny Gognitti, just the man I've been killing to see.
Payne? Freaking fed! I knew from day one there was something screwy about you. What do you think you're doing? You're a freaking cop. You ain't got squad on us. You can't just come in here waving your piece like it meant something. Yeah! Oh my God! Oh God, you shot me! Ah! You're dead, Payne! What the hell are you waiting for, you apes? Kill him! Kill him!
With pleasure, boss.
Gognitti bailed. I made like Chow Yun Fat.
Max shot down Vinny's men and quickly read the letter on the table, addressed to the Don himself.
The letter was addressed to Don Punchinello, but Vinny had never had the nerve to finish it.
Jack's gone voodoo. Just the other night, he shot Dino because he wanted to see what his brains looked like splattered on the wall. He's a freaking mad dog. We're running out of men and business fast.
Gognitti had been living in mortal fear of his boss. Jack Lupino was a psycho.
Vinny ran for his life through the night as Max gave chase.
I don't know about angels, but it's fear that gives men wings.
He continued his hot pursuit of Gognitti, who jumped on a train, clutching his wound from Max's bullet. Max jumped onto the next one, continuing to pursue him.
This was my second train ride of the night. The way it started didn't promise anything better than the last one. Freezing wind tearing at my face like sandpaper and razors, ice hard and slick under my hands and feet. And somewhere in the background, the wail of sirens, the city howling after me. New York sped by in fast forward. Dark rooftop water towers and a dead forest of antennas and chimneys, all a blur. When the train he was riding slowed down, Gognitti made his move.
Both men landed on the rooftop as Gognitti continued making a run for it. Max was slowed down by more of the mobsters, but as per usual, they were shot down. No matter where old Vinny ran, Max followed like he was the Grim Reaper, holding his scythe while Vinny's grave waited for him. Of course, on the way, there was more news on the TV for Max to catch up on.
Max Payne has nowhere left to go. We are very close to capturing him. You'll get a full statement then. Right now, I've got better things to do, ma'am.
That was Deputy Chief Jim Bravura from the NYPD with no further comment at this time.
Max knew Bravura was one of the good guys, a man who didn't deserve to be caught up in all of this. That's why he kept his distance, avoiding him at all costs. He couldn't risk a stray bullet finding its way to Bravura, whether from his own gun or a mobster's. It was a line Max refused to cross, even when he'd shot down hundreds of men on this night alone, ending countless lives. Vinny had nowhere else to run at that point. His back was to the wall as he tried to outgun Max Payne, a mistake many had made and it proved incredibly fatal for them. Max injured Vinny in their tussle, but withheld the killing bullet for now.
Gognitti ran out of steam in a dead-end alley with steam boiling out of the sewer grates like all the fires of hell were burning high beneath us. It was shakedown time. Where's Lupino?
Screw you!
Bad start, Vinny.
Police brutality!
I rate pretty high on that.
You can't just hurt me in cold blood?
Just keep telling yourself that. Listen good, Candyman. I'm not gonna be anybody's fall guy. I want to know where your boss is hiding. There was no glory in this. I hadn't asked for this crap. Trouble had come to me in big dark swarms. The good and the just were like gold dust in the city. I had no illusions. I was not one of them. I was no hero. Just me and the gun and the crook. My options had decreased to a singular course.
I'll tell you, just don't hurt me no more. Lupino's at Ragnarok, the nightclub. Book me, take me in, hold me to the freaking jail, just don't hurt me.
Your rights will be ready at your funeral.
Max knew where to go now. The nightclub was waiting for him. Ragnarok was a gloomy building designed like a church. The dance floor inside was dimly lit, pulsing with shadowy energy. Gothic decorations clung to every corner. As Max pushed deeper in, it got more and more sinister. Pentagrams marked the floors, evidence of sacrificial rituals. Burning candles flickered against blood-red curtains, their light casting sinister shapes on the walls as countless books on Satanism and other practices were scattered on the ground. If it wasn't already abundantly clear, it now was. Jack Lupino was truly unhinged. Entering Lupino's lair, it was evident that more sacrificial rituals took place here. Only God knew how many men were sacrificed by Lupino here to whoever it was that he worshipped. Lupino's use of Valkyr had sent him off the deep end into insanity, and Max's fight didn't seem to only be about avenging his family anymore. Valkyr was a plague to anyone it touches, and he needed to do something about it. But first, there was someone in his way. Jack Lupino.
The flesh of fallen angels! Come to me all! Astaroth, Beelzebub, Asmodeus, Baphomet, Lucifer, Loki, Satan, Cthulhu, Lilith, blood to you all! Secrets living under the skin of reality. I've seen it. The corruption of flesh. I'm the wolf, yeah! I am the wolf! I I have tasted the flesh of fallen angels. I've tasted the devil's green blood. It runs in my veins. I've seen beyond a world of skin, the architecture of blood and bow and arrow. Death is coming! She is coming, and hell follows with her. This is the twilight winter. I am ready to be her son. Her time is now, and all who stand in her way must die!
The craziness that Lupino was spouting was reminiscent of what the junkies were saying 3 years back as they killed Max's wife and daughter, fueling him further. The deadly shootout that took place at Ragnarok would be another headline as Max rained bullets on his assailants, and finally, Lupino went down.
When Lupino finally went down, I wanted to make real sure he'd stay that way. V was a bad monster, turned them into friggin' zombie demons from outer space.
I think he's dead already.
Huh? And that's when it happened.
But dead or not, you've got the wrong guy.
In stepped this knockout femme fatale holding a gun to my face. I returned the favor. Lisa Punchinello. Lisa Punchinello was the Don's wife.
Mona Sachs. Lisa's evil twin.
Your safety's off, evil twin. You might hurt someone with that gun of yours.
Lisa's the damsel in distress. I'm the professional. I'd blow you away without batting an eye.
Sure, and you can check out my credentials splattered all over this joint.
Jack couldn't have framed you. Not the state he was in. We're after the same slime bag. Angelo Punchinello's the one who murdered your friend and framed you with it.
You know this for a fact.
I've got my sources.
I don't have a clue these days. I just shoot them as they come. Who put a contract on the Archfiend?
This one's mine. I hate the guts of that sadistic wife-beater. Why not pool our bullets for this one?
I thought you'd never ask. My finger was starting to twitch.
How do you like your whiskey?
I'm easy, as long as you don't try to slip me a Mickey.
You're a real angel, Max.
It was good stuff. Tasted sweet as honey going down.
Nothing personal. Can't risk you going berserk and getting Lisa killed.
Mona Sachs, the sister of Don Punchinello's wife, had put Max to sleep, worrying that he'd get her sister Lisa killed in his pursuit of Angelo. Max fell, the same nightmares that had plagued him for 3 years now taking control. The dark and gloomy night only got worse. The snows fell harder on New York. For Max, it was a cold day in hell.
I woke up in a bad dream. My head felt 2 sizes too small for my brain.
Max Payne. I envy your name.
And the killer was smiling.
Pleased to meet you. I'm Frankie the Bat Niagara.
Niagara, as in you cry a lot? He had a baseball bat and I was tied to a chair. Pissing him off was the smart thing to do.
Nothing wrong with a little laugh now and then. Take me, for example. I love to watch cartoons. Cartoon violence is a fascinating thing. Let's take a break. I need to take a leak and maybe grab a cold one at the bar. Don't worry. I'll be back to finish this off. And then, it's checkout time.
You play, you pay, you bastard. He swaggered out, and the door clanged shut behind him, locks clicking into place. Everyone makes mistakes. Mine hadn't been to crack jokes about the goon with the bat. He'd have cracked my skull regardless. It hadn't even been to trust a girl with a gun. I had blindly gone after the first bad guy on my hit list when I should have been aiming further up the ladder, at the head of the Punchinello family. I couldn't bring myself to be pissed at Mona. Guess I had a soft spot for a pretty face. But when somebody decides to play baseball with your head, you tend to get sore. They had dragged me back to the basement of Lupino's hotel. I was beaten, bruised, and blue. I felt like the chair I had broken to get free.
Max was beaten to a pulp and only had a baseball bat. He fought his way through the goons like usual and reclaimed his guns, popping a few painkillers like he usually does, only worsening himself bit by bit. There was yellow tape as the police had come and gone, and on the phone the mobsters seemed to be talking about Mona.
That crazy witch, you should have heard her. She was a real scream when the boys caught her trying to cap the Don. Oh, that's friggin' bad. To the trio? That's even worse than what Frankie's doing to that poor bastard downstairs. She's gonna take a long time to die.
The mobster muscle on the phone was talking about Mona. Punchinello's trio were nothing but bad news.
Max shot the mobsters down. The news continued being broadcast live about what had happened down at Ragnarok, and it became apparent that the police and the public thought Max was among the ones killed there. Next to the radio was a letter addressed to Frankie by the Don.
Framing me hadn't been enough. Don Punchinello had put a hit on me. He wanted me dead, and it had been important enough for him to give written instructions to Frankie about it.
Max Payne should die like a dog for the trouble he's caused. Frankie, I know I can trust you to give this matter the dedication it needs.
Sadly, Frankie wasn't quite as up for it as the Don had hoped, as Max made his way over to the bar. The painkillers now took full effect, mixed with the adrenaline pumping through his veins. He was as dangerous as ever.
The hotel bar was fast developing quite a history. True to his words, Frankie was there, having a beer.
Jesus Christ. How the hell did you get loose?
Got bored waiting. Thought, what the hell, we could just as well finish this here.
Max gunned the mobsters down, and finally Frankie went down too. He helps himself to his car and leaves that blasted hotel that belonged to Lupino. But not long after, he notices he's being tailed by a familiar-looking car.
I spotted the tail as soon as I left the hotel. A big black Mercedes. I had seen the car before. That time it had heralded impressive explosions. Vladimir was back.
Bang! You're dead, Max Payne.
I might have laughed if I remembered how. What's this supposed to be? Cops and robbers? Look, you want something with me? Get in line.
Peace, man. Relax. You know you are a real news item. Armed and dangerous. I am going to make you an offer you can't refuse. I've always wanted to say that.
It's a bum rap. I've been framed.
That's a moot point. Whatever you did or did not do, I'm sure you had good reason for doing it. Want to hear me out?
I'm listening.
Vlad makes Max an offer. His gang is at war with the Punchinellos, and Max was currently pursuing them, or rather pursuing the Don, Angelo Punchinello. Vlad proposed for Max to help reclaim his cargo ship, as their crew pledged themselves to the Punchinellos, and in exchange, he'd give Max all the guns and firepower he needed to make his assault on the Punchinellos' manor. Vlad practically owned the city's arms trade. Max would get the guns, he'd kill one of the Don's big henchmen, and Vlad's sails would be raised once again on the ship. Everybody would win, as Vlad would say.
If you want to get to Punchinello, you need heavy-duty persuaders. I am just the man to get them for you. Change the ship back under my flag, maybe pop 2 in the traitor Dime's head while you're at it. You'll get enough guns to start the apocalypse. You in or out?
Let's get this show on the road. Vladimir was one of those old-time bad guys with honor and morals, which made him almost one of the good guys. None of us was a saint.
Max made his way over to the ship and gunned down the crew, and of course the traitor bore his Dime. Angelo Punchinello tries to get through to Dime through the ship's radio, but he finds that it's Max who picks up.
Dime? Angelo Punchinello here.
Angie, tell me, how much did Dime cost you? I bet it was more than his name.
Max Payne.
Right the first time.
You're dead, punk.
You sure you're not confusing me with Boris here? But you are right, of course. Pretty soon we should get together and have a talk.
You son of a...
Pissing Punchinello off was a dangerous game, but when people get mad, they make mistakes. I should know. That's where I wanted Punchinello, mad enough to trip over his own feet, preferably into a grave.
He makes his way over to the ship's cache, and as Vlad promised, he was free to take anything from the arsenal he saw in front of him. The ship was reclaimed.
Did you get everything you need?
Check.
I owe you. Anything you need.
This is my solo. When I'm through, Punchinello won't be anybody's problem anymore.
Clear as vodka. But anytime you get between a rock and a hard place, just whistle. This could be the beginning of a beautiful friendship.
You really get a bang out of this big-time gangster act, don't you?
Max would then give Angelo a call.
Even with all this firepower, I figured I couldn't get to Punchinello at his manor. I could only hope that he wouldn't pass a chance to hear me beg to see he's won. This is Max Payne. I want to cut a deal.
Payne, you're a dead man.
That's what everybody keeps telling me. I got your ship and her cargo. I want to meet. No pain, no gain. Capiche?
You know my restaurant?
Yeah, I know it.
1 hour.
Punchinello's restaurant had seen better days. Snow was falling like ashes from post-apocalyptic skies, but that was outside. Things would soon get hot in the Don's restaurant.
As soon as Max entered Casa D'Angelo, it was clear. Every corner was rigged to explode, a ticking time bomb waiting for him to take the wrong step. It was a death trap. Punchinello was willing to burn everything down if it meant taking Max with it. But even then, he was severely underestimating what he was up against. He was underestimating Max not because of his skills or anything, but because he had nothing to lose, and he was driven by fury and vengeance. Max made it out of the flaming restaurant, and Vlad found him soon after.
Vlad had seen my smoke signals. The Mercedes was revving to go, almost drowning out the banshee wail of the sirens.
You coming? We'll drop you off at the Punchinello Manor.
Sounds good to me.
When this is over, look me up. I could use a professional like you.
I'll keep that in mind. The night groaned with cold. The garden lights flickered nervously. In their light, the falling snow was dead white before the darkness ate it up. I had heard the stories. The trio were mad dogs. They'd have hung the heads of their enemies over the manor gates if the capo had only let them. Punchinello wanted pain. He'd see the pain. The trick in my situation was that there was no trick, no matter what the movies tell you. No rules, no secret mantra, no roadmap. It wasn't about how smart or how good you were. It was chaos and luck, and anyone who thought different was a fool. All you could do was to hang on madly, as long and as hard as you could.
The battle that raged on in that mansion took a while. Max would have to take down the Don's henchmen, the trio, one by one as they all hid in their own little holes throughout the mansion. He started in the wine cellar, the air heavy with the scent of aged oak and decay. On the table was a lifeless body, a sign crudely placed on it, reading, "Soon." Whoever had left it had a flair for drama and a twisted sense of theatrics, as if they were some sort of angel of death. Mona. The sisters, Mona and Lisa, were truly special, each one of them possessing a different kind of charm. On the kitchen table in the mansion lay a number of tarot cards, and even though they weren't Max's kind of cards, he couldn't resist taking a glance. The first card was the Tower, its imagery unmistakable, signaling the mansion itself, and as for the second and third cards, Death and the Devil.
The devil was the master of the house, and death was me, coming for him.
Max cut his way through Angelo's men, each shot fired with precision, each life extinguished with ruthless efficiency. He moved like a storm, relentless and unyielding. One by one, he hunted down the trio. The first to fall was Pilot Providence, dead. The second, Joe Salem, also dead. As Max pushed forward, he managed to avoid a blast from a grenade launcher and clear the room out, but when he turned, he finally found one of the sisters. It seemed Mona's assault on the mansion had sadly failed, but she evidently managed to escape, because the woman laying lifeless on the bed was her sister, the Don's wife, Lisa. Seeing her, Max thought back to another woman's body lying on another bed. He hated that sight as he raised the blanket and covered Lisa's body. The memories wouldn't stop haunting him, but he was inching closer to the truth. On the phone next to him, he received a call, and a familiar voice was on the other end.
Max Payne.
Talk to me.
Alfred Woden. You've got company. An armed helicopter just landed on the manor grounds. You must hurry.
The more the merrier.
There was a squad of armed forces closing in on the mansion. Max had to hurry it up, as he finally made it to the last of the trio, Max Mognaio. With him dead, Punchinello was done for.
Outside my door. Hurry. He's coming for me. You gotta hurry. Please.
I could hear Punchinello on the phone begging for help. He should have been saying his goodbyes. Punchinello was a pushover. The moment I stepped into the room, he folded like a deuce before a royal flush.
No, wait. I was just doing what I was told. I couldn't refuse. She's someone high up. Government, maybe. I don't know.
He was trying to buy more sand for his hourglass. I wasn't selling any.
But it was too late. The killer suits had invaded the mansion and made their way in. The door was kicked down. As Angelo thought he was saved, they shot him dead. Max lunged and emptied all of the bullets that he had on the suits before him, taking them down. As he tried to find his way out, he was surrounded.
I could tell when I was outgunned. It was time to take another beating. The mystery witch was a real barracuda. Trouble on dagger heels, a smoking assault rifle in her hand, and an army of killer suits behind her.
How sweet. I get to kill two birds with one stone.
Sooner or later, it was going to catch up with you.
Mr. Payne, it's time to show you the benefits of my brew. Be a good boy now.
You'd find that Lady Luck was really a hooker. You were fresh out of cash.
Gentlemen, we're done here. Take me to Cold Steel.
It was futile. The woman, Nicole Horn, was the one that had called Max back in his house 3 years ago when the invasion took place. Her voice cut like steel. It was a hard one to forget. Max couldn't do anything. As she injected him with a lethal dose of Valkyr, he fell to the ground. Max's heart pounded in his chest, each beat a violent thud that echoed in his ears. His breaths came in hollow gasps, and his vision blurred, consumed by a miasma of green. The lethal dose of Valkyr coursed through his veins, dragging him toward the edge. It was a slow, inevitable descent, each second pulling him a bit closer to the darkness, a bit closer to heaven. The nightmares were always the same. Twisted recreations of that house Max lived in with his wife and daughter, their voices and cries calling out to him, darkness and trails of blood. He couldn't escape it. No matter how much time had passed, he couldn't escape those memories. As he looked around, there was a phone ringing, as well as a letter next to it.
Bartender is shiny stuff and dreams are made of stooped necromancers. He sings like a banana wrist, having strayed too close to the constellations on their shaved skulls.
It was a bad line in a prank call. Someone spouting insane babble. I couldn't make sense of it. But I had an overwhelming sense of deja vu. The caller's voice sounded oddly familiar. There was something disturbingly familiar about the letter before me. The handwriting was all pretty curves.
You're in a graphic novel.
The truth split my skull open, a glaring green light washing the lies away. All of my past was just fragmented still shots, words hanging in the air like balloons. I was in a graphic novel. Funny as hell. It was the most horrible thing I could think of.
Sam Lake nowadays is well known for his love of meta, but this fourth wall break was truly wonderful to witness. Max is horrified to see the shots of his life playing out, words hanging in the air, weapon stats. It kept repeating, room after room, but no matter what, it all led to the same thing, his final moments with his wife.
Max, something happened at the office today. A strange memo. Something about Vikings.
Honey, I gotta run. You can tell me all about it this evening.
Have a nice day, darling.
The bullet holes were rubies on her chest, blood glowing on her ivory skin. She was so beautiful.
Max woke up.
Slowly, the green nightmare faded, leaving dark stains on my soul that would never come off. I felt like flatlining. I was all shook up. I woke up in a cold sweat, sick and tired to the bone, lying in a puddle of my own puke. The hag had said take me to Cold Steel before it had all gone crazy. It was a clue, the only one I had. It took me forever to crawl back to my feet and hit the road, but when I did, I drove straight to Cold Steel Foundry outside the city. There was a whole lot of action around the place for a freezing winter night. Trucks coming and going, men running. I had the drop on the mystery witch. She thought I was dead. I was on her blind side. I was going in.
He remembered the last thing Nicole Horn uttered before she left him to his overdose with her men, Cold Steel. As he headed in, the bad trip had put him in a mood none of the painkillers he'd taken over the course of his journey had ever put him. He had more adrenaline pumping through his veins than ever. He felt nothing as the cold wind and the snow continued to drift. The factory was the perfect spot for any kind of illegal activity. It was way out in the middle of nowhere in an abandoned industrial area, and it was about to be Max's next playground for destruction. Mercenaries from Azer Corporation tried to stop him, but they're no match for a geeked-out-of-his-mind Payne. Traveling through the molten steel and shooting down Nicole's men, he passed a tunnel and found a walkie-talkie.
Perimeter breached. The facility has been compromised. Repeat, the Deep Six has been compromised. Initiate Operation Deadeye.
The walkie-talkie military lingo could mean only one thing. They were getting ready to destroy the evidence and vanish into the night. I was so close. The hidden truths were just around the corner.
Operation Deadeyes had commenced. What the hell was that? Max was dead set on finding out. Passing the tunnel and heading deeper underground, that's exactly what he would do. He comes across a document that mentions a lab worker attempting to smuggle out a specific chemical for himself. The chemist was caught and locked up in a cell in, quote, D6's old test facility. Max rides an elevator that goes deeper into the complex, entering the Deep Six. A few killer suits execute one of the lab workers, as Max realizes where he's standing. They activate the self-destruct sequence as it becomes apparent this is where Valkyr was manufactured for years. The insignia on the ground was familiar to Max. It belonged to an army. This was an army bunker, and where the labs for Valkyr have been all these years. If only Alex had been here to see this. All the progress that Max made in the case over the course of a few nights. If only Max wasn't a fugitive being pursued by the Force at the moment. A lot of what-ifs and if-onlys. Max had no time to think. He had to act quickly. The entire lab was about to be destroyed in a haze of fire. Max freed the chemist mentioned in the documents, who guided him through the corridors of the lab. They reached the decontamination chamber as the chemist helped Max through. The air grew thicker as Max descended deeper. His eyes scanned every corner. And then, he saw it.
Top secret. Project Valhalla. U.S. Army. Yggdrasil Network. Valhalla, the otherworldly place in Norse mythology where the bravest heroes spent their afterlife feasting and fighting forever, their wounds miraculously healed night after night. Valkyr, the maidens who chose the most courageous Viking warriors and carried them to Valhalla. 1991. The research objective is to create a chemical substance to enhance the stamina and morale of infantry troops. 1995. Results unsatisfactory. Project canceled.
Someone had decided to continue the sick experiment unauthorized.
Project compromised. Data leak. Fix the damage by any means necessary. Security clearance red. Authorized by the project lead. Field test. Double the dosage for all the remaining test subjects. Observe and record the subject's behavior in an urban setting.
The drop-off point was my old address in New Jersey. The file dated 3 years ago. Just when you thought you had reached the deepest depths of horror, it suddenly got worse. How to turn off that small voice inside your head that started to whisper that you should be glad that now, if not before, your revenge was justifiable on any conceivable moral scale. That small voice proved, beyond any doubt, that I was damned.
More what-ifs and if-onlys rang in Max's head, mixed with the sound of the self-destruct alarm going off. Project Valhalla was meant for soldiers serving in the Gulf War in the 1990s. It was cancelled, and yet for whatever reason, Nicole Horn continued in secret, developing Valkyr and distributing it. When the data leak happened in 1998, it was Michelle who came across the dossier about it when she worked in the district attorney's office. Alfred Woden had sent it anonymously in an attempt to incriminate Nicole Horn. Michelle had assumed that the documents were sent by mistake, but still wanted to tell Max. Sadly, that day, he happened to be in a hurry. Everything that had happened, what Max's life could have been, what it ended up becoming, the innocent lives lost, it all led back to Nicole Horn. Max had a bullet with her name on it. He rode the elevator back up and made it out just in time before cold steel went up in flames, and the entire lab was gone.
I felt thin as death. I've been living on an endless supply of week-old donuts. They were fuel for this crazy furnace inside my head. I couldn't remember when I had last seen the sun. I was on a permanent graveyard shift. When the darkness fell, New York City became something else, any old Sinatra song notwithstanding. Bad things happened in the night, on the streets of that other city, Noir York City. I was in an all-night diner, downing cup after cup of coffee that tasted like engine oil, when a new message from BB got me back on the killer track.
What the hell happened at Roscoe Street? Maxie, I'm going out on a limb here. We need to talk this through, come up with a plan. 2:30 a.m., the Choir Communications Garage.
The more I thought about Alex's murder and the frame-up, the more it felt like an inside job. I should have seen it coming. BB had sold me out, and now he wanted to finish what he'd started. The garage was dead. BB showed up in his tailor-made suit, gold watch, and cufflinks to match, all way beyond a cop's pay.
Maxie.
Oozing suave charm, he was guilty as hell. What the hell does BB stand for anyway? Backstabbing bastard?
Come on, don't be like that. Have a cigar.
I don't smoke.
Maxie, you have no idea how big this is. It's huge. You have no idea.
I think I do. You're a bribe-taking bent cop who sold out his partner. Those mobsters in the subway were a dead giveaway. Hard to miss. Bet it was exactly like this with Alex. Up close and personal.
You can't win this one, Max.
No, but I can make damn sure none of you do either.
BB turned out to be like the rest of them, a mole for Azer Corporation and for Nicole Horn, making sure none of what she was up to was discovered. His charming personality and bright smile, or his gold watches and cigars, were not enough to convince Max to not open fire on him. Max pursued BB through that parking lot. Scores of men tried to intervene unsuccessfully. He shot BB down, finally avenging the death of Alex. And the payphone next to him rang, like it did many times before.
Yeah.
Max Payne?
Whatever does it for you.
This is Alfred Woden. I can give you the name of your enemy. Come to the Asgard building presently. We are expecting you.
Woden was waiting for me on the steps of the old building.
Mr. Payne, let's go inside. The others are anxious to begin.
The others?
Mr. Payne, I would like to introduce you to my colleagues in what we call the Inner Circle.
You've been watching too much X-Files.
You have seen the files on Project Valhalla. We can fill the gaps, provide you with the information missing from those files. We were all involved in the early stages of the project during the Gulf War.
What's the catch?
We would very much like to blow this thing wide open, but our hands are tied. Her name is Nicole Horn. She was the key figure in Project Valhalla. When the funding was discontinued, she simply refused to quit. She knew exactly what she had in her hands. Nicole Horn is the president of Acer Corporation. She has more than half the city in her pocket. This must be kept under wraps. If you try to go public with this, we will deny any knowledge. We need you to take her out. Afterwards, we can protect you. Make all the charges go away.
That was the cue for the killer suits to kick in the doors and swarm inside. It was an impressive floor show, but I decided to leave early anyway.
Max jumped out of the Asgard building. The killer suits of Nicole Horn had opened fire on everyone in the Inner Circle. Alfred Woden was one of the leaders of the group, his name a play on Odin, the one-eyed king of the Norse gods who ruled over the universe from his throne in Asgard, and the land of the blind, the one-eyed man is king. Through a security monitor, he sees that Woden was only playing dead, as he got up like nothing had happened. Soon after, Max found Woden's office and a tape with an extortion note attached to it. The tape was of Woden and Candy Dawn. It all made sense now. Nicole Horn was blackmailing him in the Inner Circle. Woden had also left Max a gift. The blueprints for the layout of Azer Corporation, all the critical areas, its elevator system, everything he needed to carry out his assault.
Mine wasn't the most original approach to the problem. It wasn't as if it hadn't all been done before. An eye for an eye, the first principle of revenge. Old as dirt, still going strong. The cardinal rule in going after someone with an intention to kill was not to make it personal, which it almost always ended up being anyway. It did with me. I took my time, cruising around the city in the snow. There was no hurry. I knew what I had to do now. I took my time, thinking about it, building up the rage. When I was ready, I parked the stolen wheels at the front entrance of the Acer Corporation headquarters. Got out, got in, got cracking. I had a bullet with Nicole Horn's name on it. I had 10,000 bullets with the hag's name on them. She had ultra-high-tech security systems, enough mercenaries and weaponry to start World War III. There was no fear.
Max had arrived at the end of his journey, the last stop to vengeance. There was much in his way to Nicole Horn. Hell, everything was on his way to her. None of it stopping him. This was it. With no choice but to set the metal detectors off, Max alerts the security and immediately gets into a shootout with the killer suits. Most of the elevators were deactivated. He'd have to climb the steps. Killer suits wielding all sorts of weapons tried to stop him. From jackhammer shotguns to grenade launchers. He went past them and past the various traps when he arrived at an elevator.
Mona, looking good.
Max, we gotta stop meeting like this.
It will be a cold day in hell before I let a narc cop stop me. Miss Sachs, do your job.
Relax, Max. You're a nice guy. I don't kill nice guys.
You're not bad yourself.
It was different when Horn wanted Punchinello dead. To cut her ties to the Mafia, he deserved to die.
The same goes with her. She's the bad guy here. Her sister was whispering to her in my favor. I knew the appetites of ghosts intimately. They hungered for revenge.
No!
A gunshot boomed and she fell down in slow motion. She was a nice girl, not really a stone-cold killer. And now she was stone-cold dead. Like religious fanatics or loyal samurai, Horn's private army was coming at me.
Mona Sachs fell to the elevator floor as Max lunged forward and shot the assailants coming their way. By the time he got back to the elevator, it was empty. No Mona. Max didn't know what to make of it. He couldn't tell whether she survived or if her body was dragged away. The elevator was trapped, but that didn't stop Max either. With a clear mind, he makes his way upward to the security office and gives himself access, taking the elevator once more to the basement. On his way, Horn's helicopter pursued Max. Once he arrives, Max destroys the servers that hold the building's security mainframe. He was now able to make his way over to Horn. Nothing could stop him. None of her security systems, killer suits, connections, or her pet helicopter. Making his way over to her office, he finds her personal computer storing God knows what.
I had seen too much of it already.
Max destroyed the computer and got on the final elevator to his destination.
No begging, no bribes. She knew better. Honor among killers. We who were about to die. Both of us knew how this would end. In pain and suffering.
All this because your wife stuck her nose into things that were none of her business.
The cops were coming to take me away. The sirens were like a bad conscience I couldn't shake.
It's ridiculous you've made it this far. You won't be alive when they get here.
Horn makes a run for it, leaving Max to deal with more suits and her helicopter. She continues to try and taunt Max through the loudspeakers, trying to throw him off, but it doesn't work. Not even close. He'd come this far. There was absolutely no stopping him now. Horn reaches the rooftop of Azer Corporation as Max follows behind. She gets through a security gate and locks it behind her. The helicopter from earlier begins to descend. Horn clearly is attempting to escape. With no way to get to her, Max thinks quickly with the time he has while the helicopter is awaiting clearance to take off. He hastily begins to shoot the cables holding the building's antenna in place. A few well-timed and aimed bullets, finally, the mast goes down.
Please repeat, 10-5, all units, emergency. Officer
They were all dead. The final gunshot was an exclamation mark to everything that had led to this point. I released my finger from the trigger, and then it was over. And then it was all over. The storm seemed to lose its frenzy. The ragged clouds gave way to the stars above.
Max Payne, this is Deputy Chief Jim Bravura from the NYPD. We've got the building surrounded. Throw down your weapons and lie down with your hands behind your head.
A bit closer to heaven. The cops' voices were distant and muted.
Freeze! NYPD! Hold it right there!
My ghosts released me from their haunting. Down below, New York City glittered like diamonds on black velvet.
You gave us one hell of a ride. Take him down to Central Booking.
You heard the man.
Woden was there in the crowd, standing by the sidelines. It wouldn't be over till the man with the patch would say so. He'd say the right words. I knew he would. He'd better. Woden grinned smugly. It was the grin of a winner. That made two of us.
It was all over. Nicole Horn was dead. Azer Corporation was a ruin. Valkyr was no more. The deaths of many were avenged on a singular night, and Max had no worry in his mind. Even when his former employers arrested him, that knowing smile from Woden in the crowd told him everything. Woden could now rest easy. There was no blackmail on him, no nothing. He'd keep his promise and use his influence to drop all the charges on Max, ensuring his protection. Max thought about everyone he'd lost, his wife and child, Alex. He was alone. He had nothing. Nothing but the sweet taste of victory, temporary as it might be. For the first time in 3 years, Max Payne cracked a genuine smile. Max Payne went on to be a huge hit, spawning a multimedia series and revolutionizing a whole subgenre of action games. The sales of the game ultimately skyrocketed, selling millions of copies as the critical reception was full of praise and positivity. Again, nothing like Max Payne had hit the markets back then. The incredible blend of third-person shooting, the bullet time mechanics, the integration of various beloved subjects and inspirations, such as the brooding essence of film noir, shaping the game's atmosphere and visual style. All sorts of iconic names and stories from Norse mythology were sprinkled across the story, characters, and themes. All the best parts of John Woo films and Hong Kong cinema, the comic book style of storytelling, it all combined to make such an amazing and memorable experience. To this day, the game is an absolute classic, beloved by millions as the first video game of its kind. Comparisons are often made to newer movies like John Wick, calling Max Payne the John Wick of the past generation. The overall story and characters were written and voice acted to perfection. Max Payne to this day is one of the greatest protagonists in video game history, one of the best modern depictions of an anti-hero. Many elements of film noir are taken to build his character, from his introvertedness and lack of interest in talking to people, to his fun use of wordplay, with all kinds of one-liners and colorful metaphors. His monologues and quotes might be one of the most iconic parts of the series, a combination of self-deprecating and dramatic soliloquies and sarcastic witty remarks and jokes. He loses everything that made him happy and meant something to him when his wife and child are murdered, and is left with one thing to seek: vengeance. Other characters are also memorable and, while not as important or quotable as Max, fulfill their parts in the story perfectly. Alex, for example, being the perfect partner for Max in that he's level-headed and judicious, the complete opposite of Max. Characters like Jack Lupino and Vinnie Gognitti make brief appearances, yet their personalities, their great voice acting, and so much more make them so charming. And the same stands for so many others, from Mona Sachs to Vlad, Alfred Woden, BB, and more. The cast was filled with characters who were memorable to the core, all thanks to their writing brought to us by the incredible Sam Lake and team, whose iconic grin is still a subject of fun and humor, still being brought up in Remedy's current works, and of course, we can't forget to mention the actors who played them in the comic strips, and the voice actors who did a phenomenal job bringing them to life. Max Payne had a variety of other versions and releases. The PS2 and Xbox versions of the game had some small differences. The PS2 had lower texture quality and shorter parts in the chapters because of the console's memory. as the game teetered on the edge of the PS2's capabilities. A mobile version of the game was also released many years later. And in 2008, there was also a movie adaptation directed by John Moore, but we don't talk about that. 2003 also saw the release of a Game Boy Advance demake for the game, complete with the comic strips and everything. That version of the game always weirded me out, but it's pretty cool seeing it play on such an old handheld, I suppose. Of course, Remedy went on to work with Rockstar for the sequel, Max Payne 2: The Fall of Max Payne, which was an absolutely legendary game in its own right, and an amazing sequel I'll talk about in a future video. And their next lineup of games over the years was absolutely gorgeous, Alan Wake 1 and 2 and Control being games I cherish. And finally, remakes for both Max Payne 1 and 2 were announced in 2022 and are in development today. I couldn't be more excited about them and can only hope to see trailers for them soon, but until then, we have the legendary original versions of the game to keep on replaying. Thanks, Remedy. You guys still bring unforgettable experience after unforgettable experience each time you release a game, and I can't wait for those remakes and Control 2. With all that being said, there's one more man we have to thank. On December 17th of last year, 2023, James McCaffrey sadly passed away. He was really the beating heart and soul of what made Max Payne such a legendary character, a voice that defined a generation of video game storytelling. His gruff and raspy voice tone and delivery was filled with all kinds of emotion, whether it was Max's sarcastic wit, his raw grief, or his fantastic inner monologues. He turned every line into pure poetry. He turned everything he touched to gold, and through that performance, the game's beautiful story of love, loss, and revenge captured the hearts of millions. His loss is still very much felt to this day, and his amazing presence as an actor and as a human will forever echo through history. Whoever Remedy will select to play Max in the remakes will have immense shoes to fill, but we have faith in them. Thank you, James. Rest easy.